now isn't that just a kick in the nuts? We put in a brand new salvage yard Dana 44 with lockers and disc brakes, only to find out that the front axle had shelled as well as, well, it broke a lot of stuff in the transfer case too. So we wound up doing the rear end of the transfer case, put the front axle in, thinking, I can at least move it around the shop on the front axle, only to find out the front axle was shelled as well. So now with two salvage yard Dana 44s, yes, we came up with a front Dana 44 with lockers, and we've acquired it and we've swapped it in. We're not going to show you that video because, well, 10,000 things went wrong. We wound up taking most of that axle out with a grinder. Everything was rusted in to the point that it just could not be removed. There was no amount of heat nor any amount of PB blaster was going to get it loose enough to come apart. So now you've got two Dana 44s in there. What's next? Well, I'll tell you what's next. You got air pumps, you've got wiring. So let's do this. So let's get the pressure pumps mounted for the lockers. If you're lucky enough to find actual Jeep ones, they're going to be high dollar, but there's an alternative. These are out of several different models of Kia, of all things. They are identical to the Jeep, like Kia Sorento and some of the other Kia Sportage and different ones that have locking four-wheel drive. These pumps are available, and a lot of people don't know this, but they're identical to the Jeep pump. And you can come up with them on eBay a lot easier than you can ones from a Wrangler. So, utilizing this tray that mounts underneath the vacuum booster, the arrangement that I'm kind of digging is kind of like this. We're going to take the one pump and we're going to set it here. It's going to involve trimming the bracket just a little bit. We're going to take the other one and we're going to put it right here, kind of staggered, so that it utilizes two of the welded in 8mm 1.25 pitch nuts that are pre-welded on the bottom of this tray. So we're going to utilize those two, and we're going to go ahead and mark where our holes would be for our others, and we're going to start drilling this tray and getting the pumps mounted. That's our first step. This one, you've got to set it off to the side. This pump will have to go on first, and if you ever have to work on them, this pump will have to be the last one off. So we're looking at something like that as far as a mounting pattern. So I'm going to have to drill here, 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 and here. And then we'll have to modify the bracket on this one, and we'll trim it just a little bit, just so we've got a place for our bolt to go through here, and we can still get our bolt in that actually mounts the tray to the Jeep. Okay, we're going to check on one thing here. We're going to make sure that we don't have to do a little bit of modification to the bracket that's actually in the Jeep, because one of these holes might actually have something underneath running interference. So we're going to take a look down in here. Okay, this is where this tray goes. Now this tray has already been modified for the two fenders. So our notch sets this way. We got to get below the wiring harness. And it sets in here like so. And yeah, that hole is going to have some interference. So in the alternative to this, having that with, what I think we'll do is we will just notch the corner of the bracket, and we will let the bolt pin the last corner. And I do believe it'll work. All right, game on. So the arrangement I liked best on this, we had some interference from underneath. So instead of drilling a hole and mounting the last hole, what we're going to do is we're going to slot the bracket on the Kia pump. And I've taken the liberty of drilling this, mounting it, flipping it upside down, and we can see right here where I'm going to need to notch this in order to bolt all four corners of the tray, because I really want that bolted on all four corners, and I really want the Kia pump also bolted. So we're just going to remove carefully a nice little slot that will then line up with the holes on the original mounting hole, so that we can just run that factory bolt right in. Okay, but that pump has to come second. This pump has to bolt in first. Here we go again. We've got the one that mounts to the existing, where we've got a welded nut. We'll run it in, we'll run it down. Slotted one. Set it up like so. We've got the backer nut. We're going to go ahead and put a lock washer and a flat washer. Others, we're going to run them through where I tap the plate, and then we will put a lock washer on the bottom. With the exception of our one here, because that one is special. Flat washer. And on the bottom side of these, we're going to go lock washer, lock washer, lock washer, nut, nut, and nut. And we'll give them a little cinch down, and we will be ready to test fit it in the Jeep. Now we're not done. We've got to do some wiring here too. And what we're going to do, we're going to take these two black wires and we're going to tie them together, because we've got an attachment here. We've got a connector that we can take apart. So we're going to solder and heat shrink, as we've done on everything on this Jeep. And we're going to come right around here, and we are going to use one of these bolt holes that's pre-tapped. We are going to use that as our ground. We're going to ground our relay system. We're going to ground both pumps right over here, right there. Got it? Okay, so now that we got these two little guys nestled in right down here, right under the vacuum booster, and you can see them through the vent there on the side of the fender. Now we'll go ahead and secure the tray, and we can get started doing all the cool stuff. cross them, fold them. Don't worry about that, that'll be fine. It's just a ground. Didn't burn all the way through the insulation anyway. Twist them, opposite directions. Really twist them up tight. Some solder. And away we go. Let the solder flow down into the strands of the wire. Good. Now, if you got any little burrs or anything like that, just take your crimpers. Yeah, these are professional crimpers. These are not rinky-dink ones you buy at AutoZone. This is the real deal. Crimp it down. Take your solder. Slide your heat shrink over the wire, like so. Over the solder joint and shrink. Watertight, stronger than the wire itself. The wire will pull apart long before the solder joint will. Now we are going to be wiring up the lockers. Now, to do the lockers, there's more things than just throwing in the axles, okay? The axles require a vacuum pump. Here's one thing that's going to be different about this build, and it's something you can do yourself. Now, a factory 98 TJ stock, bare bones, basic, is not going to come with all of these relays in the fuse box or all of these auxiliary fuses. No, that's something that you can do yourself. Most of these are dummies and are absolutely dead from the factory. They're not even hooked up. You look in them and a lot of them don't even have a place for a relay or a fuse to plug in. And that is where these things come in. These you harvest out of a wrecked YJ, XJ, wrecked TJ if you can find it. There's a number of other vehicles that have this same Thomas & Betts fuse box. And this is a set of pin release tools. Amazon or eBay, less than $10. Has everything you need to fully disassemble this fuse box and go in down the main bus bar, because these have a metal bus that runs all the way down, and you tie these in to make these dead ports live. You see they've got a receptacle on one end, they've got a receptacle on the other end, and they snap into the bus, and then they fit in the slots all the way down in the different positions and give you your hot feed to your relay, and they give you your, basically you can fill in all the blanks. One of these here, if you look real closely, you'll see that I have scratched fan, because that fan, that relay controls that fan. That's something you can do with these. It's very easy to do. If you understand a little bit about electrical, you'll be fine. But you take your pin release tools, this yellow part releases, the black box falls away, you slip in these jumpers, and away you go. Salvage all the stuff, test them first, but salvage all the relays out of there. You can save a bundle. A lot of places will sell you a fuse box, a lot of salvage yards for $20. Just, chop it off, give them $20, walk away. And there's way more than $20 worth of relays in here. And big fuses. So enough of that. Now, we took the liberty of pre-wiring this Jeep with all of the triggers for all of these relays. And that's what we're going to be using to activate the pumps. Okay, there's some wiring sticking out over here that when building the wiring harness for this Jeep, since it used to be a 4-banger, I went ahead and snuck some wiring in that comes directly off the fuse box. Now, I don't know if you'll be able to hear this or not. I'll try to shut up so you can. But if you take this and you ground the wire here, now there's a couple wires that are not going to be used. And you take this wire that's tied to the battery, and I've got a ground wire tied to the two blues. And if I touch this, you hear the relay. And as we touch that, this orange wire that's got a loop tied in it becomes energized. And that's what we're going to solder our wire to our pump to. And this one down here that I was touching with the 12 volts, we're going to extend it, and we're going to take it over and through the grommet that I've made for the sound system, and we're going to take it through to our switch bank. Now, what we're going to do, we're not doing just any old switch bank. These are a common switch from Napa. They have an LED backlight. And yes, they cause cancer in California, as you saw in one of our other videos. Now, they're very simple to hook up. You've got a power in, you've got a power out, and then and these can be set up for hot side switching or ground side switching. And the only thing that changes is if you use ground side switching, you would apply a power wire to this third pin to cause the LED to come on when the switch is pressed. But we're using standard 12-volt side switching, positive switching. So we're going to bring a switched ignition that is on only when the engine is running to this top wire, and we're going to take this wire out to our trigger for our relay, because even though these are small pumps, we don't want the inrush of the motor passing through the switch. We'll let a switch that's designed for that, for heavier amperage, take that load. And then we're going to take a ground wire, but we're not just going to take it to this switch. No, we're going to take it out to each of the axles, because on the factory Dana 44s, there's a little switch inside the axle. And all it is just a little tattletale switch. I don't know if you can see that little plastic plug there with the wires coming out of it. That will tell you when your lockers are engaged. So when you push the button, our locker light is not going to come on immediately. When the pump pumps up and the locker engages, then the LED on the switch will turn on to tell you, yes, the lockers are engaged. So that's what we're going to do. Follow along. Start out by capping the two unused wires in this system, because these are designed to switch between common, normally open, and normally closed, and all those wires are in place. So what we're going to do is we're just going to put a heat shrink on here. We're going to shrink it down past the end, and then we're quickly going to pinch to seal the glue and make a watertight seal. So that wire can safely be tucked inside the wiring harness, and it's not going to damage anything. Now, we have one more of those wires to do, and then we're going to get down to business here. And in case you're wondering about the markings on the wire as far as the twists and this and that and the other thing, I've already been in here with a test light and meter doing a little bit of probing just to make sure, because I have slept a couple of nights since I did the wiring on this. But when you're doing a project like that, always plan ahead, because you just never know when you might want to add something cool. You know, I would say that, you know, like light bars or something like that. But the thing is, Don't add light bars until after you've added skid plates. And always remember, brake lines, they're not limit straps. Okay, so same thing here. Bring the heat. Pinch it, cap it. Okay, now those are out of the way. Now the ones we're after right here, right now, sounds kind of like a Van Halen song. We want these two blues. And don't pay any attention to the color on these blues, because all those are is a trigger across our coil on our relay. So what we're going to do is we're going to take those two, we're going to twist them together, and we're going to do another Western Union. And we're going to use a little bit bigger heat shrink, and we're going to bring it over here and pick up our ground for our motors. And we're also going to make those the ground for the trigger on our coil. A little too hot to take the heat shrink. A little bit. Over. And we got a good solid ground. Now, let me try to route this. I want to take and trim this just a little bit though. I'm going to split that tape that was binding these in bundles because I had them pre-bundled. And go back that way. You go through the rubber grommet, get them in and get them over to the switch. So you'll have a wire that goes to the motor here. And then route it through here because we want to be able to lay our split loom down through here and make it look nice and factory. And it doesn't matter which motor we hook this to, we can change it up at the switches. Pull it all the way through over to where we're going to pick up these other things. Okay, because then I got something extra special here that I'm going to do. We're going to take a bigger heat shrink just to kind of keep this stuff controlled. We're going to slip that bigger heat shrink over the ground wire. And we're going to slip these other two blues through it, and we're going to kind of secure them so that we get our wires all in the right proximity to each other. Okay, I kind of like that right there. But also, would like to do one more. So let's do a second one. Let's pull these back. Take that, a little bit of slack, kind of like that. We're going to take this with a little bit of slack, kind of like that. And we're going to go ahead. So we're going to take that with a little bit of slack, kind of like that. We're going to take this with a little bit of slack, kind of like that. And we're going to shrink down. And we're going to go ahead and kind of bind these together. And we're going to shrink down kind of bind it, kind of like that. Now we're going to take orange, kind of like that. We're going to take our blue, we're going to take a nice little overlap here. Orange, like such. Just a little bit more. And we're going to trim this. Nice, and strip that back a little bit farther, like such. Now, we're going to trim this. And strip that back a little bit farther. Strip that back. Let's put a heat shrink on it first. That would be a good idea. Let's put a heat shrink on it first. And strip it back. Back, in opposite directions, twist in opposite directions, cross them, can't stress this enough, hold in opposite directions, twist in opposite directions, can't stress this enough. Cool, so that we don't shrink our heat shrink before it's time. Now we've got this yellow that also goes to the motor. Now, as much as I talk about not using crimp terminals because they can damage the wire and cause the wire to break at the crimp, there are some times where you just absolutely have to use them. One of those places is grounding. You're going to have a ring terminal. And what I like to do is I like to use terminals that have no insulator. I'll crimp them lightly just to make sure the wire doesn't pull out. Then I'll solder them and I'll go ahead and heat a heat shrink over the butt. That way you've got the best connection you can possibly have and you'll have good connection. See that there's a split in the top of the crimp. And on your professional crimper, your crimp is going to ride in the cradle, and then there's a dimple die in the top. You put that dimple die right on the split, and then you squeeze, and it drives those two down in and makes for a nice crimp. You don't want to over crimp, because if you over crimp, what you're going to do is you're going to break strands. You don't ever want to over crimp. Now, got connection that is actually soldered to the ring terminal. Now we're going to take a piece of heat shrink and we're going to slide it up over there, and we're going to just let it seal right on down, and we'll attach it, and we should have our, and we'll just bring that right on up and over the whole thing. Take our torch. I hope I'm getting this on camera. And we'll solder it right on down. Now, everything I'm showing you here is old school. This is the way that it was done back in the day. But you know what? It's a tried and true method, and it still works. And it's better than anything else that's out there. Now, I have not tried some of these new products that have a heat shrink that's filled with a solder band that you stick the wire in. I'm sure everybody's seen the infomercials on TV, and I've never actually used one of those, but I'd like to give them a try. And we're going to temporarily take that off because that is a jumper to hot that I was utilizing to show my beautiful wife, since she's not here to see what I'm doing. Doctor told me I should get away from my work for a while. Always look before you drill. Make sure you're not drilling through any wires or anything critical. We've got one air date for the grommet you intend to install. I would have liked to have gone with the stereo, but there's just no way we're going to get more wires in there. Okay, the hole saw is a good fit in that area, so we're going to mark it. We're going to go for it. And a little bit of combination paint and primer. Just to seal the edges. Now there's a few other things you're going to need to do this project. You're going to need vacuum line. You're going to need split loom. You're going to need wire. And of course, you're going to need heat shrink, solder, soldering iron, strippers, and drill, grommet, you name it, okay? It'll come to you as you do it. Watch the video, you'll see what's going on. And now that the paint has had a few minutes to dry, we're going to take the grommet and we're going to stick it in the hole. And one rubber grommet installed. Now we're going to do a little something extra right here. This is a water resistant plug you can pick up at any auto parts store, Advance, Napa, O'Reilly, you name it. But it's a weather resistant plug. It's rubber gasketed, rubber filled, rubber backed. The connections are all good and tight. They're about $7, $8. They're not horribly expensive. But just in case we ever have to separate the body from the frame, I want to be able to break this at this point. So we're going to pull this. I've got a wire fed down here to the right length. We're going to pull it up so we know exactly where we need to be. And we're going to cut these wires off. And we're going to go ahead and slip our water resistant connector right here, tuck it down, take it through the grommet, put it all together. Now I suggest always go ahead and plug your plug together and make sure that your colors match before you solder or heat shrink anything else. Then this harness will go through the grommet and up to the dash. This part will stay under the hood. This part is going to double back. It's going to go back to the back axle. Now it's time for a little bit of split loom. Just loom it through in the same path that you got your wire strung out. Right about there is going to be our routing. We'll get it cleaned up a little bit, but we're going to go ahead and dress up the end that goes to the inside, get it poked through, get it snapped in place, and then pulled through where it needs to be, and then we'll worry about this up here as far as getting it in place. Now, since this is a base model Wrangler, right here in the fuse box that's behind your glove box, you're going to find a fuse port that says rear wiper that's not going to be used, especially if, well, obviously if you've got a soft top. And this is the one where you're going to find ignition on only. It doesn't work in auxiliary or off, only when the key is in the on position. That's the one you're going to want. And you can just crimp on an 1/8 inch spade connector and go right into that port on the right hand side, and that's going to be your hot. Now, as much as I don't like crimp connectors, sometimes they are a necessary evil, like I've said before. And behind the dashboard, you know, they're not going to take a lot of weather unless you got the top down and my neighbor gets his boat out. So I'll forgive you if you use some crimp terminals back here. You want to stick it in until you see the wire poking out the end just a little bit. Always give it a tug. Make sure that it's going to hold. If not, throw away that crimp. Do it again. Now, but mind you, crimps can be expensive. We're going to go with the front. The orange with the black stripe is my little tattletale wire that goes down to the front axle. So it's going to go on the top terminal. And then I'm not real sure which is which on this. I'm going to have to figure it out. So we're not going to slip these on all the way. And we've got to make up something a little special here for this, because we need 3 hot only while running terminals. Now, we're going to go with the front. The orange with the black stripe is my little tattletale wire that goes down to the front axle. So it's going to go on the top terminal. And then I'm not real sure which is which on this. I'm going to have to figure it out. So we're not going to slip these on all the way. Some crimp lugs work better than others for this. And I don't know if these are going to do the job. Not only while running terminals. No, I'm not caring for that any too much. So what I think we're going to do is we are going to do a little bit more soldering. And what we're going to do, we're going to split this thing 3 ways. So we're going to trim this back. And we're going to get ourselves 3. This one I can stand to strip back just a little bit more. And we're going to have to obviously use a bigger heat shrink on this. And this is going to take a lot of solder and quite a little bit of heat. One stray there. We're going to spin it down. All right, be right back with some solder. Now we're going to stretch a heat shrink over that. Yes, you can solder with a torch. Some people prefer it. Okay, you got a connection that's never going to come apart. You'll notice that heat shrink shrinks down a long way. Flip it over, hit the other side. Okay, and you got a connection that's never going to come apart. Oh, there's a bad one. While you tug on them, it doesn't crimp, you toss it. Get another one. You do it over. The last thing you want to do is have your lockers stop working when you're out on the trail and you need them. Oh, there's a bad one. While you tug on it, doesn't crimp. Now, our purple is our tattletale wire for our rear lockers. We're going to do these switches so they're front, rear, and then we've got an auxiliary. Now, if I'm thinking right, if I'm remembering right, the bottom one is our switched output. I didn't mean to put that all the way on because we still need to test these. Little orange on, just a little, and then just a little, just a little, and just a little. Now we're going to turn the key to on. I've got pumps running out here. Now we're going to simulate the locker light. Okay, that is correct. The pump is running. Pump is running. Okay, we can push these all the way on. We can put the switch panel back in place. We can put the dashboard back together. And we'll have some spares for our next accessory, which I got an idea of what's coming up. But I'm not going to tell you what it is. That's going to be a surprise. And let's hook back up our lighter plug. And that'll go in there just like that. There's the gear shift. We just need ourselves a 7mm wrench, and we are off to the races. When you start hooking up your pressure lines, it's important to remember that the vacuum port on the top is the pressurized side. The bottom one is the intake and needs to be routed to the highest point you can possibly put it on the vehicle with one of those little caps that goes on your axle breather tubes that helps it prevent taking on water in the event you get into some really deep water. Okay, now your intake is going to be slightly larger than your pressure line. As you can see, that was 7mm or 9/32. And it's going to slide on just like so. And we're going to route it in such a manner that we can get it to a nice high point without any interference from anything else. We're probably going to put it over here with the filter for the evap canister. Kind of like right over in this area. Just like so. And we'll secure that and we'll get a vent tube on it. And that's nice and high. Okay, and the other one, same thing. We're going to take it to the highest point. You've seen it once. We don't need to show you again. Now this vent we're going to take right along with the washer fluid hoses. We're going to take it up here to nearly the same spot. Right about here. When you route the air lines, make sure to route them smoothly. Make sure not to kink the lines, and be generous with the zip ties. Utilize brake lines, fuel return lines, or any other wiring harness to zip tie to. There again, make sure that it's routed smoothly. We're going to take it right down the fuel line. We're going to make a trip under here twice because we're going to run a tattletale line down the other side. Now here's something that's important. When you get to here, and I'm going to utilize these extra hold-its that were here from the factory. We're going to zip tie to them. But you want to leave a loop here so that there is plenty of play. We don't want to be against the exhaust pipe, but we also want to be able to flex. And a good thing to do might be to follow the brake line, because the brake line will flex, but you want to leave a place here where this can flex and travel along with the movement of the axle. Brake line, and we're going to cut some of this off before we do, because we have an excess, because there's enough here for the front and the rear axle. I said I was going to cut it off, and I decided to go ahead and route it through before I cut it, kind of like so. We got a little extra slack, so it's not going to be putting any tension on the brake line. Follow the brake line all the way until we have to get to the vacuum port. And our vacuum port is up here on this side of the axle, right up here. So this is going to be where Okay, we've got it pressed on nicely. I'm going to put one or two more zip ties just to kind of hold this up off of the axle, and so we don't get any rubbing on the sway bar. Now here's a little gem that's going to set you back a little bit. Yeah, I don't know if the missus has seen the bank statement yet from White's Energy Dodge and Gillette, but it might be the end of the channel. This is a genuine Mopar locker pigtail repair kit. 75 bucks a piece, but worth it. Now these things, when you take them out of the package, they're going to look like, oh my God, do I need a pin release set to put the wires in that? Nah, let me show you how these work. They set these up so that even the most brain damaged person possible could do it. Now they come with two different sets of wires, orange and purple. Okay, now in this particular application we used orange on the front and we're using purple on the back just to keep them straight, so we don't have to switch things around on the finish. Now, I don't know on a Rubicon which was front, which was rear, but on this one we're putting the purple in the back. And the way these work, if you look closely at these, you'll see that, you know, they get these little rubber seals in the back, and there's no wires in the front, and, you know, it looks like you got to take the thing apart. No, actually, all you have to do is just take the connector end and you push it through the blue rubber. It's real stretchy, it's siliconized rubber, so it's very stretchy, and just push it in until it clicks and it's locked in. Same with the other one. We're going to take that and we are going to just push it through. Push right through the siliconized gel, push until it locks. Now, polarity on these does not matter. All the switch in the axle is an open close. When the lockers are disengaged, it's open. When the lockers are engaged, it's closed. So no worries. And it's got the little red thing here. You push it in until it clicks and then slide this over, it's locked. It can't come disconnected. Why 2 layers? Of wire. Because in the case that I botch it and have to shrink it all the way down, I have a second chance. So we're going to take these larger sleeves. See what I'm doing. We're going to slide them all the way. The exact same thing we've done earlier in the video. And then we're going to put on the smaller sleeve. Now both of these are technically correct because heat shrink will shrink a long way and they shrink to a range of wire. This is much easier when you can see it. You probably can't see what I'm doing, but it's the exact same thing we've done earlier in the video. Okay. This is much easier than you can see. Okay, now we got this extra piece of heat shrink on here. We're just going to slide it over and we're going to make it 2 layers thick. Nothing wrong with it. It's just a little insurance. Because of all the connections on here, this is the one that I only have one chance to get it right. Take this slide the big sleeve over our insurance policy. Measure your length. Good. Don't ever throw those away, just save them and put them in a bag. Eventually you'll need one. Some little project. Okay, switch off, open diff, switch on, air pump pumps up, lockers have to firmly engage, and once they've firmly engaged, the light comes on. Hope you all enjoyed this video. Hope you learned something. And if you want to do this project for yourself, if you have any questions, drop me a line in the comments. I'll be glad to answer them for you. Until then, peace out.